Welcome to the DC pod. I'm Christian, joined by Darcy, where we cover all things basketball. Now, Darcy, the Thunder, Celtics, Knicks, Wizards, and Utah. What do they all have in common?
They're on winning streaks. I don't know.
They're the five teams your Mavs beat on their 5-game winning streak.
Let's go.
So you guys have started to obviously pick it up since the All-Star break. I don't know what your overall record is, but your last 5 games have been, for the most part, pretty convincing. I mean, people look at yesterday's Utah game and go 8-point game, but for the most part, the Mavs were pretty much in control.
Absolutely. 19-7 in the last 2 months. That's good for fourth best in the league.
There you go.
So, yeah, we're trending in the right direction. And that was a really, really good win against Utah. You know, it's a home game, so we expect that we can win it. But with Porzingis not playing and Jay Rich came in and absolutely balled. 5 for 5 from 3. He was a key. He was vital to the win. And a huge game from Finney Smith as well. 21 points, did a hell of a job defensively. It was really good to see.
Well, I saw in the press conference after the game that Finney Smith said something like, I knew they were going to put Rudy on me, so I knew I was going to get a lot of shots. So that's obviously a really difficult matchup for Rudy, because it obviously forces him to have to leave that paint area where he's most comfortable, where he can be there patrolling and ensuring that he's protecting the rim and doing his job. But if he then has to get out to Finney Smith, and I mean, he might not be the best shooter, Finney Smith, but it doesn't surprise me that if he has 12 threes, that he makes at least 4 or 5 of them. Just NBA players, they're much better shooters than people will give them credit for, even the guys that aren't the elite 3-point shooters. I saw that and I was like, man, you guys, there's definitely some trap games in there where you could have slipped up. I specifically thought the Knicks game was a trap game for you guys when you went into MSG, but you managed to overcome that. So yeah, definitely positive signs, and I'll be keen to see how you guys finish out the rest of the year, because a few of these teams are coming, and included in them will be one we mentioned in one of these segments. But yeah, the West is really starting to heat up, that's for sure. So
health is a big key for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll give out some early impressions of teams that did make moves at the deadline. It's now been roughly a week. We've been able to see at least 3 or 4 games of some of these teams with their new guys. So we'll give a bit of an early impression on them. We'll have a chat about some mystery teams / players that potentially don't get a ton of airtime when we're speaking on the pod about certain teams. There's definitely plenty of teams and players that miss out. And then we'll end with some rapid fire questions where I believe you'll be asking them and I'll be answering, Dust. So that'll be good. So ready to roll?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. Roll intro.
Lead pass. Whoa! Stop it! Stop it! Do not do it like that! What are you doing, Dragons? Parker. J.O. Smith! We just saw men fly! Iguodala to Curry. Back to Iguodala. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James! LeBron James with the rejection. Decide not to use it. Curry way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! Play Harden, step back, puts up the 3, got hit, shot's good, and 1! James Harden double team, and a chance for a 4-point play.
Okay, so early impressions. As I said, it's been a week since the trade deadline. We've started to see at least a 2 or 3 game sample with players in their new teams, in their new systems. What have you made of it so far? You can take the lead in whatever direction with whatever team or player you want, Das. Go for it.
Okay, so I'll start off with the team who's probably the favourite to take out the championship so far, with Brooklyn. And although they didn't make a trade, we have seen the first look of the blowout guy, LaMarcus Aldridge.
Yeah.
And the first impressions were pretty good. He looked pretty comfortable. He looked happy. He looked like he was keen to contribute, and he did show off some of what we know he can do, scoring the basketball, catching the ball in that mid post against pretty much anyone. He can square up and shoot, in a pick and pop scenario in out to almost the 3-point line. He is super, super effective. So it's really important for Brooklyn. Just gives them another weapon that they can go to for a small period of time to just keep the scoring clocking over. You know, it's amazing how they've been able to just continue to win at such a high rate with, you know, guys coming in and out of the lineup constantly. You haven't seen KD in almost 2 months, and now Harden struggling with an injury. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep that going. But having Aldridge fit, healthy, and, you know, ready to give you at least 20 minutes when he's going to try to put up 12 to 15 points, it's huge for them. So I think he's come out of what I've seen from Brooklyn. He looks like an elite role player that I think, you know, for a championship team, he's going to give them important minutes. Maybe not closing minutes, but important minutes for them.
Yeah, well, it's funny you talk about now the big man rotation. When Jared Allen was with the Nets, I know I was someone who was very much a fan of him playing over DeAndre. And then when sort of Jared Allen got traded, it was like, okay, now Nick Claxton's the backup big before they got Blake Griffin. And a lot of people, again, me included, were like, man, maybe Nick Claxton is better than DeAndre again. And now it's kind of, I guess since bringing on Blake and LaMarcus, they've been getting a chunk of the forward big man minutes just to be able to get him, you know, I guess, fitting into how they play and getting used to it. I know when Blake got bought out, he didn't play for like a week or 10 days. And that wasn't due to injury. That was due to just him learning the system. And I suppose they had the luxury of not needing Blake Griffin right away. But yeah, DeAndre, I don't think has been injured at all over the past week, and he's barely played any minutes. I don't even think he got court time at all against Charlotte in LaMarcus's first game. I'm not sure he played against the Chicago Bulls the other day as well. So I guess there's no real need. You kind of know what you have in DeAndre, but you don't really know how a Blake and LaMarcus fit. So I guess they'd be the priority, and that does make sense to me. I had a gut feel when I saw Ben McLemore as well get bought out by Houston. I was like, fuck. I mean, I messaged you and thought the Knicks could get him, but I also in the back of my head thought, man, what if Brooklyn just pick up another shooter? Like that wouldn't surprise me at all. But now he's ended up at the Lakers, and it's a good point. Effectively, the Nets trades were the buyout guys. So I'd be interested to see how LaMarcus goes when, you know, up against a real dominant center in the East. There are a couple of them. Obviously, Embiid's the first one that comes to mind, but at least offensively, maybe LaMarcus isn't as potentially washed up as people thought, because he doesn't have to do much in this Brooklyn team. That's the beauty of it. He just doesn't have to do much.
Bit of rejuvenation for him, but also like they're playing with guys who are elite basketball IQ players, guys who have been all-stars, guys who are veterans, and you just see when, you know, if Harden makes a great decision out of the pick and roll, or Kyrie does, then LaMarcus has got the ball and they're in advantage play when it's 2-on-1. He's going to make the right decision. Like, he's going to take the open shot or find the open man. You know, there's a reason he's been so successful in this league, and just another smart guy that they can put in their lineup. It's quite dangerous.
Yeah. Okay, I've gone Denver. So obviously pretty fascinated to see how Gordon fit into that group. And I mean, yikes, do they look good. So they hammered Atlanta. They hammered us, the 76ers. They took care of business against the Clippers. They were pretty flat against Orlando, but managed to come back and win that at the end. And I mean, he has fit in just seamlessly. I mean, he's spoken about how easy it is to play with a guy like Jokic. He's never played with someone with his passing ability. But I mean, Gordon's cuts are quality as well. There's a real art to the cut in terms of timing and being able to find angles and really take advantage of a defender when he's ball watching. And that's similar to what we sort of mentioned with how Pat Williams is developing with Chicago, and how Chicago had like a ball handler like Thad Young who could find some of these cutters, including Williams. But Gordon is super elite at cutting, that's for sure. Not to mention his defensive versatility. You've already seen just how useful it is. It's only going to help now that a guy like Monty Morris is back. We haven't really seen the full team. Porter Jr. is a guy that's really started to play well as of late. If he can stay consistent, that obviously makes him a real threat. The one thing I'll say is, man, Will Barton needs to like settle down. sometimes there's just too much Will Barton on certain possessions where Jokic and Murray might only touch the ball a couple times, and Barton's got it for 18 out of the 25 seconds and takes a dumb step back because he thinks he's Kyrie. So if he improves his shot selection, then that'd obviously be pretty key. But again, it's not bad to have a guy like Barton who's just irrational confidence, and you need that sometimes in the playoffs. He could give you easily, say, 10 points in a quarter that could completely sort of change the momentum of a game. So it's not all bad for Denver. That's really the only thing. Just sometimes Barton needs to settle. But I think you've seen how easily Gordon's fit in. And you could kind of predict that because Gordon's not a guy that, needs 20 shots a game and all of this sort of stuff. He can excel in a role like most guys. And his role is pretty easy. So, and again, playing with Jokic is unbelievable. Him and Murray get all the attention and just play off that.
No, you're right. I think positionally, it's as good a fit as you could make. Like he's able to, his position defensively as a switcher, a tall guy who can defend stronger players. And it allows Michael Porter Jr. to be that bona fide three-man that he wants to be. He can now be like a 7-footer playing the wing who shoots lots of threes because, he's more of a knockdown shooter than Aaron Gordon, but Aaron Gordon can do the dirty work and can get around the rim and can offensive rebound. It's a really good positional fit, and the early returns are really good. It's true what you say about his versatility, especially defensively. Now it allows, him to take one of the other team's best forwards, and then Michael Porter Jr. is not all of a sudden getting put out on an island. And with the ability to push Will Barton to the 2 spot, it's a bit of an adjustment for him, but that makes them very, very tall. That makes them a really long, tall team. So I think the lineup does look really good. You're definitely better off with Will Barton trying to get buckets going than you were potentially riding Gary Harris, in the playoffs to hope that he can make some threes. Barton can do a lot more with the ball. So I'll be interested to see how he kind of develops into that starting shooting guard spot, hopefully going forward. And interested to see what they do on the bench there. It might be, their closing lineup might look a little bit like Monte Morris with Jamal Murray, because we know how explosive Murray is as a scorer and how good decisions Monte Morris makes in getting them into offense. So, yeah, I do like what I've seen from them so far. And, Jokic is playing at such an amazing level. Like, I'm not surprised that Aaron Gordon's saying it's lots of fun to come and play in here and get into this system, because I don't think anyone could say that going to play with Jokic wouldn't be fun. He's an elite player, and their whole offense is evolved around him, and it looks like a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, and the good point you made there about what they could have with the closing lineup is they do have a lot of options, because they've still got a guy like Paul Millsap that pushes to the bench. He may not be the same guy he used to be, but at least he's a veteran. He's been in playoff situations before. You then have JaMychal Green. And then if you really need size, you've actually got JaVale McGee that they also picked up. So, I mean, say what you want about him, but he has won a couple of rings with both Golden State and the Lakers. So, I mean, who really knows where Denver could go? But so far, it's been Denver and Dallas that have been the two teams in the West that have really taken off since the All-Star break and trade deadline. So, definitely something to continue to monitor, to see if both those teams can really cement themselves in. I don't know how far Dallas are off the top 4, but Denver definitely are top 4, and I think they'll hold it. It's just a matter of, potentially where Dallas end up. But either way, where are Denver?
They're just behind the Mavericks in the last 2 months for the best record. I'm still going up the standings now,
okay.
But they've been, they're basically the 4th hottest team in the league over the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Behind Brooklyn and I think Utah. Brooklyn, Utah, Dallas, and then them. Yeah, absolutely huge.
They're the top 4. Okay, cool. What do you think of Chicago? How have you made of their sort of past week since they've been able to get Vooch and guy like Troy Brown, Daniel Tice?
I think the main adjustment is looking at Vooch, because he's played his best ball with Orlando. And he's turned from just a guy to an all-star in Orlando. So I feel like he was extremely comfortable. The whole thing was built around him basically out of necessity. So now he's trying to integrate himself into a team that already kind of has a small identity, or it's based loosely around Levine, who's an incredible player. So in terms of their front court rotation, like, he's also getting used to playing with Thad Young as opposed to Markkanen. And the last few games, they've been switching up that starting lineup. So Vucevic is learning a lot on the fly in terms of how he's going to play, where he's going to get his shots, and kind of how he fits into the pecking order of the offense. But I think that, it could only get better from where it is now. And it looks decent. They don't look horrible. They look like, they're trying to figure it out. And they had one really good win. Who was that win against?
Brooklyn.
They beat Brooklyn. Yeah. So Brooklyn, a little bit undermanned, but anytime you can take a win off them is huge.
Yeah.
And, great for their confidence. And I was just watching them before. Interesting game. See if they can get that win at Indiana. That'll be a really good test for them. I know Sabonis is out, so a big chance for Chicago today. But I'd like what I've seen. I think, it's definitely not a finished product and a long way from it. It's not like Vooch just come in and then all of a sudden they know what they're doing. But I'm very interested to watch them, and I think they need a little bit more time. As long as they're hanging around inside that play-in level, I really can't wait to see what's going to happen for them. What do you think so far?
Yeah, well, you make a good point about how it hasn't been horrible. I mean, they put in a really good effort against both Phoenix and Utah to keep those two games pretty close. They then, as you say, took care of business against the Nets. And I mean, the thing I really like is I like the balance of their starting lineup now, because they have a pass-first, tall, defensive-minded point guard in Satoransky, and that kind of balances things out next to a guy like Levine. And then obviously Pat Williams on the wing, Thad Young at the 4, Vooch at the 5, and then you have Tice Markkanen and Troy Brown as the really three main guys that have come off the bench. I mean, Kobe White's probably included in that, but he was injured for the past few games. So
he started hot in this game, Kobe White.
Has he?
I think it's a good role for him as a sixth man, because he loves to get his own shot off. So to come off the bench and be a scorer, I think that might be an ideal role for him. And Sato probably looks better as a starter.
Yeah, and you can say probably the same about Markkanen in that sort of 6-man, 7th-man role, where Kobe White and him, all they need to come on and do is literally just score the ball, give that boost off the bench if things are flat, or help continue build off what the starters got for them in the first and third quarters when they at the start of each half. So it's nice because they have those two guys, and you can even throw a guy like Denzel Valentine in there, that the streaky guys that could get hot, and similar to what I was saying with Barton, score 10 points in a quarter during the playoffs that could really swing a game and the momentum. That's what you need. I can think of was it Seth Curry for Portland a couple playoffs ago? He just got really hot and hit 4 or 5 threes in a very short period of time against, I'm blanking on who it was, but that just comes to mind as just something that can really swing a game completely. And enough isn't spoken about that. You do need your Lou Williams and those sort of guys that can just come on and, that's why I think as well that the Clarkson aspect of Utah, all of these different guys that can come on and can give you buckets in a short period of time. They might be frustrating during the regular season, but I think their value is pretty crucial when, games are tight in the playoffs and it's really hard to get a bucket and refs are swallowing their whistles and you can't really get the normal foul calls. Well, sometimes you need a guy to just create something out of nothing. So the more you can have of those guys, obviously increased chance that one of them goes off. And that can really spark things. But yeah, I think as long as Chicago are in that, it's hard to see them not being in the top 8 at least. But I mean, worst case scenario, if they finish 9th or 10th in a play-in, that's a pretty dangerous scenario. You'd feel much better if they didn't make the play-in, but it's hard to see them missing out. Toronto
are 2 games behind them, and Indiana are on a little bit of a slide, but they're only 2 games ahead of them. So.
Yeah.
I feel like they'll be good, close to 500 on the road home here. And you're right about their rotation in general. I feel a lot more confident in it, like tenfold more confident now than I did at the beginning of the season. So yeah, I like what they've done and interested to see how it's going.
Yeah, like if shit goes south and Thad Young gets in foul trouble, you can bring in Markkanen. I've seen them before. They play Vooch and Tice together if they want. If they don't want Markkanen in there because he's potentially a liability defensively, well, Tice is pretty sweet to have there as a backup. So they seem to have at least 2 guys at each position, which is pretty crucial. Obviously, optionality, versatility, and Donovan's been in playoff situations anyway. So there's a lot to like with that Chicago team. But yeah, I think it's just been, as you say, that the crucial thing is they just haven't had enough time. So give them and at least another 2-3 weeks to start to really build some chemistry as they head into the playoffs. But yeah, again, I really like what I've seen. What do you make of Portland? Because they obviously were another team that acquired a guy like Norm Powell, and they've got their 3-man backcourt. What do you make of how Norm's looked for the Blazers and how they look as a team?
I think he's looked really good. I think he's definitely the guy that we saw in Toronto. When you take a look at those standings right now, Denver that we talked about, they're 31-18. They're in the 4th seed. The Lakers have dropped to 31-19. Portland 30-19 in the 6th seed, and the Mavs a couple games behind at 28-21. So for Denver, all the streaking they've been doing, Portland haven't been dropping any games. They just seem to keep winning. And CJ has had a couple of good games since he's been back. He looks relatively healthy. If he can get into a groove, this team is, as always, pretty much every postseason, they're very, very dangerous. They've won 5 of their last 6, Portland. Powell in his last 3 games, over 15 points in every game and 9 steals in the last 3. So getting it down on the defensive end is a bit of a menace. And no doubt he can give you points. He can get to the free throw line. He can hit open threes. He's a guy who puts the ball in the basket. If you leave him on the court, he's going to get points. So I've talked about it before throughout the season that one thing I really like about Portland is in close games, their 4th quarter lineup becomes so dangerous. A lot of the media have talked about how they don't guard teams and they give up a lot of points. But for all the close games that they're in, I feel like they're very likely to win them. When you take away the fact that Dame's probably the best clutch scorer in the league, one of the best clutch scorers we've seen in years. But they've got so much shooting with CJ. They got Powell. They got the throw Melo out there in clutch situations to hit open shots. I really like this team, and they're a team that Dallas always seems to have some trouble with as well. So if we end up matching against them, no one wants to see them if they're in the play-in. No. But then it'll be really interesting to see how the matchups end up in the playoffs with the combination. So Portland, I like what they're doing. They're bringing their big man along, Nurkic along. Starting to give him some more minutes. Hopefully, he can find a bit of form. Maybe pray that Zach Collins can get back at some stage. But for the meantime, their guards are playing at such a high level that they're going to be right there, and they're going to keep winning going into the playoffs. One thing I want to say is Trent Jr., who they got rid of, who is looking quite good in Toronto. Hit a big game winner yesterday. Yep. Huge game winner. You can just kind of see the value that I think even Portland knew that they had in Trent Jr., that they could get a good player for him. And it looks like, he's the type of player that Toronto will want to sign going forward.
Yeah, definitely. He's got to be a part of what they do in the future. So it'll be good to see, because as you say, the most important things match up. So these last 3 weeks to a month, it's going to be interesting to see where all these teams finish out. I think most teams will be, really putting the foot in the accelerator to ensure they have a really good seed for not only home court, but to try and get the best matchup possible. There could be a bit of games being played, bit of gamesmanship. But if we lose this game, then we match up with, X team as opposed to, Y team. So there could be, some of these playoff teams really throwing games if it means they get a better matchup for the first round of the playoffs. So that'll be good to see, how that all unfolds. Because the other thing is, as we continue towards, the end of the year, more and more teams are being able to increase their fans, their capacity. Obviously, as the vaccination and stuff rolls out more and more, it seems that restrictions and stuff are eased by the week. And so it's hard to think that by May or June, you wouldn't be allowed to at least have, half of the arena full in the States. So all of that stuff's going to play a big part. That's why I think you see the Bucks really starting to figure out their shit, because they ideally want to try and jump at least Philly to try and get a top 2 seed. So they don't have to face Brooklyn until potentially the Eastern Conference Finals. So a lot of these teams included Dallas, Denver, Portland. They're going to be pushing hard. But yeah, I think my only comment with Portland is if they're shooting well enough and they're playing well enough on offense, then there's no real issue. It'll help them with overcoming any flaws they have defensively. But I mean, sometimes they face a bad matchup. The Bucks were an example of that the other day. They couldn't keep that game close. Anytime they went on a mini run, it was just way too much. Drew Holiday and Giannis absolutely destroyed him. So sometimes they will face some bad matchups like that. But for the most part, as you say, their offense is explosive enough. And if they keep it close, then how do you bet against Dame Lillard? So interestingly enough, Portland play the Clippers today, and then they play Utah in a couple of days' time. So it'd be nice to see how they go in those matchups and see if they can really take it to them. Because I think outside of the Bucks win, they've played pretty average teams in those 5 out of 6 that you mentioned. No, I think they hammered OKC. They beat Detroit pretty easily by 20. They played Orlando somewhere in there. They played Toronto. So a lot of those teams are, middling to really bad, apart from the Bucks. So as you say, the Clippers, Utah will be a really good test for them to see where they, sit. Because, the interesting thing is Beverly's back for the Clippers. So that he's obviously a guy that they can throw now on a CJ or a Dame, whoever gets hot. But yeah, I think the next 2 games will give us a much better indication of where the Blazers sit within the hierarchy of some of these Eastern Conference and Western Conference teams that are really dominant. So that's probably all I'd have to say about them. I am worried about their defense, probably potentially more than you are, Das. And I don't think it's a good sign that Nurkic is already missing more games. Like, he's not playing today. And I think that's to do with his ongoing injury with his leg or knee. I think obviously we know he broke that a few years ago. Yeah,
he definitely has enough time to get into it. You just want to be monitoring him closely to make sure that he is finding his way into some form. If they do slip a seed or 2 because he hasn't really been able to play a lot of time, that's okay, but only if he's good to go for that round 1 matchup. So that's it. It is very important that they get him right because, they don't really have any backup in that position. If he's not playing and we haven't seen any Zach Collins, then we're seeing 30+ minutes of Cantor in the playoffs, which is very, very dangerous, especially defensively.
Yeah.
One more team that I post deadline that I want to talk about is the Celtics.
Yep.
So the main acquisition we know they made is Fournier. It was all looking a bit gloom after game 1 where he went 0 for 9, missed an uncontested fast break layup, and they had a horrific loss. But he did bounce back with 19 and then 23 points in the next 2 games. So I guess what you know about Fournier and what I liked about this move is that he's a consistent guy who can score. A guy can shoot. And when you look at Boston's team, outside of the 2 gun wings and then Kemba Walker at the point guard spot, they don't really have a lot of shooting. It's a lot of Marcus Smart trying to get hot. But Fournier is an upgrade at that shooting guard position, and I think that does help their depth. I think the key to this team, they've got to get rolling. If they're going to make a serious run at the conference finals, then they've got to get some kind of momentum going. It all comes back to their chemistry, and I think the key to their team chemistry is not necessarily their 2 young all-star wings. It's Kemba Walker, who we know, is cops a lot of criticism, but everyone loves him as a locker room guy. And he's a guy who, if he plays really well, then all of a sudden they're a dangerous team. And obviously Marcus Smart. So all the talk about him being in trade room has definitely probably made it difficult for him to play his best ball. But now that that's done, they're going to be rolling with him. He's going to be their key stopper, whether it's off the bench or starting. He really has got to kind of get this team, emotionally put the team on his back and get them back into the fold. Two things that I think are trending in the right way for Boston. Obviously, the more minutes for Time Lord is early, turn around some good results. He almost had a triple-double the other day on 9
He's going to get one. He's going to get one soon.
With no turnovers. And Peyton Pritchard has had a couple of nice games. He's shooting 41% from 3. I think moving out Teague and bringing him as the bona fide backup makes a lot of sense. And for that reason, I think they're a little bit better. And I'm interested to watch them over the next couple of weeks, see if they can get a roll happening.
Yeah, well, they face us today. They face the Sixers, so good matchup, good test because we've shit the bed the last couple of games. So we had a 6-game road trip and we came back and we were pretty tired and we got Embiid back and we barely beat the Timberwolves. Bloody Towns tried to end Embiid with that dunk, which I admit was pretty nice, but he can still take that L back to Minnesota. Then the Grizzlies the next night, we just came out and we were so flat. We were just tired, sloppy. Everything was so bad. So we ended up losing by 16, but that for the most part was a 25, 30 plus win effectively to the Grizz. We gave up 45 points in the third quarter. So that was brutal because the Grizzlies are not a very offensively gifted team, especially without Triple J. But yeah, good test for Boston. So I think their issue is kind of the big man depth at the moment as well. Want to see probably when Tristan Thompson comes back, it'll give him a little bit more of insurance in that front court. Because as good as he is, Time Lord doesn't have much playoff experience. So there potentially will be times where you need to just say, yeah, this isn't working, or we'll go to Tristan Thompson, who's pretty reliable. You know what you're going to get out of him. That's for sure. The only other thing is I just think Miami probably haven't seen enough of Oladipo in that lineup yet to be able to start to get a feel for how they look. I know Bielitsa came across from SAC. They play Memphis today. That'll be a good test. There's a bit of a bitter rivalry between those two. Do you remember last year when Iguodala refused to play for Memphis because he thought they weren't good, and then he went to the Heat and immediately played on the court because he thought they were a winning team, and so the Grizzlies players took that personally. And I think the Grizzlies actually beat Miami twice last year after the trade deadline because they obviously take that game very personally. They played a couple of weeks ago and Memphis won by 4 points, but that was when Miami were kind of, really hovering. They were battling, going through a tough stretch. So interesting game today in particular, but it'll be good to see where Miami are, similar to Chicago in 2 to 3 weeks, to sort of get a better feel for those guys, because they're getting in a new starting shooting guard that needs more of the ball, like an Oladipo is. It's going to take some time to adjust to that. So it'd be interesting to see how that all fits. But at least Miami is starting to play better. That's what I've noticed recently.
They're gonna be a hella tough out. It's just a matter of them sorting out their rotation. And they've given a lot of minutes to Ariza, letting him get back into.
That's true.
But now they've got to do the same thing to Oladipo. Let him play, let him get into a rhythm, and then hopefully they'll sort that rotation out. They've got a lot of depth, a lot of options. They're a very dangerous team.
Yeah, that's true. Haven't even seen Hero play that well this season, to be honest. So there's always potential for him to get hot. We know a guy like Duncan Robinson, how he can shoot the ball. And then you have playoff Jimmy. So that'll be good to see. They're another team you've got to be interested to see where they end up, because I don't know what they are at the moment. Are they 7th? Are they 6th? But it kind of feels like they could end up 4th.
They've hopped up above the Hornets. They're in 5th, and if you can believe it, Atlanta are in 4th right now.
It's hard for me to not see Miami finishing top 4. Anyway, So mystery teams players. So we do speak about a hell of a lot of teams and a hell of a lot of players, but there's some that we just obviously don't speak about enough. Now, I'm happy to go first with this from my team, because we have mentioned them right at the start of the season, potentially for the wrong reasons. But the Houston Rockets, I actually really like the group of guys they have now, Das. I watched them play yesterday, and they've really freaking took it to Phoenix. And if not for a few poorly executed plays down the stretch, they missed a couple of good looks. They potentially could have stolen that. So in the end, it was a 3-point loss, but geez, they played well and they were actually pretty competitive. I'm not sure if you can expect that every game, but I just think if you take that sort of sample that you saw from that one game and take it to more games, they could really play spoiler to a lot of teams come the end of this season. But you look at how the sort of rotation could be, and I like Porter Jr. and Avery Bradley in the backcourt. You then have obviously Jayshawn Tate and Kelly Olynyk playing the forwards, and then Christian Wood as the big man. And then you have Sterling Brown, DJ Augustine, Kenyon Martin Jr., and DJ Wilson coming off the bench. And they're also missing John Wall and House Jr. with injuries at the moment. So just the way I saw those 9 guys play, I was pretty impressed, because they're a freaking fun team to watch. Like, if they played a little bit better defense yesterday, I mean, sometimes, when Bridges and Booker combine for 10 threes between them, it's hard to stop just hot shooting, because Phoenix are a pretty explosive shooting team. But I just think Houston overall, they're pretty fun to watch. I wonder if a couple of those guys are buyout candidates, potentially a Bradley, maybe an Olynyk, as sort of Houston head down the stretch and start to really go south in terms of tanking for that draft position we've spoken about a lot. That's really important. But for the moment, I thought they're actually super fun to watch. Olynyk's playing great since he's come across from Miami.
I agree with that. One of the hottest guys on fantasy right now, Olynyk. He's he's shooting the ball really well, rebounding, assisting, playing some defense. Yeah, he's nice. I think he does want to get moved to a team potentially. I think he could really help a contender. You saw the way that he did in certain series, really helped Miami last season.
Yeah,
I think a team like the Lakers maybe would be interested in him. Maybe a team that needs a bit of front court depth. Yeah, a lot of teams could use him. He's been really solid. It's interesting what you say. I actually reckon, from what I've seen from Houston, I like watching them without John Wall, I guess, because it feels like when you've got John Wall out there, you need to let him be John Wall. Like, you need to let him hold the ball the whole time. You need to let him run the offense. Like, every transition opportunity, it's like, okay, we've got to better get some Wall so we can try to go full court. Like, I don't really like watching John Wall that much anymore. And I do like the ball in Kevin Porter Jr.'s hands because, he's being a playmaker. I think he's averaging over 5 assists since he joined them. So he's still throwing a few turnovers, but his, the way he boogies with the ball and the way he's able to get his step back, how athletic he is when he does choose to go to the rim, it's almost Harden-esque, some of the stuff he's doing. He's extremely athletic and he can really shoot the ball. So I think he is probably the most interesting piece on this team and why they're good to watch. I love watching Christian Wood at the beginning of the season. So he's a little bit checked out right now mentally. I think he's a bit pissed off that this team's not very good, but going forward, he's an elite player, I think. And they do have a couple of nice pieces. Jayshawn Tate, really good role player for sure. I liked picking him up in fantasy as well. And Avery Bradley, interesting because a couple of games of him showing you what he's still worth. He's still that guy who can dog the other team's guard full court. He's still that guy who will work hard defensively and will hit that open three when he gets a chance. So another interesting buyout guy for a lot of money. Lots of teams would love to have him kind of on their bench as a backup guard defender role. So, not bad watching a bit of Houston right now. I think their coach, deserves credit because it's been the most up and down season, and his first gig as a head coach coming from the Mavericks. So I hope he does well.
Talk about someone that deserves a break, like far out. He would have lost like 5 years on his life after this season. Like, he's gone through it all. A star player demanding a trade, then not getting it right away, mailing it in, all the injuries they had. Then they brought in Oladipo. Oladipo didn't want to be there. Like, it's pretty crazy.
Wow.
Then they dealt with the Christian Wood ankle thing. Then what did they lose? 20 games in a row before they won a game. Like, poor guy.
You think about what they can do, what they can do next in this 20 game span before the draft, which is really their next real opportunity to make some difference. I think the key is developing a guy like Porter Jr. and making him a key part of the team going forward. And interesting to see. Probably DJ Wilson needs a few more minutes as well, because as good as Olynyk's playing, like, Wilson is a guy you want to figure out whether he's actually going to be part of your team going forward. And Olynyk,
yeah, exactly.
He's going to be useful for any team if he does get moved.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how long, because they obviously signed Wood in the offseason. How long do you need to have a guy that you sign as a free agent until you can then ship him on? I don't know what their salary cap rules are for that, but if they're they have their draft and it kind of works out that potentially Wood is, not needed because he's more of a win now type guy. I don't think he's a guy that would want to be around a rebuilding team for the next 2 or 3 years. Then you can easily ship him on and get something back, because I think he 3 years, 40 is what he signed anyway. So, that's a very movable contract in today's NBA when he's getting 12 or 13 a season. And there's a lot of teams that could potentially want to use him. So worst case scenario, you can just ship him on anyway. But yeah, I think it's a good point you make about Houston. Prioritize Porter Jr., maybe buy out some of those guys that don't really fit. Continue to keep playing Jayshawn Tate, see what you have in DJ Wilson. Kenyon Martin Jr. in there as well is just an athletic guy. I think House Jr. could be used as well by a few contenders. He's a pretty handy wing.
I think he thinks he's a little bit better than he is. I think he is a useful player, but I think he's kind of run out a bit in Houston. Like, he was part of a potential team trying to go all the way, and then he had that big stuff up in the bubble where he went against the protocols.
Yeah.
So I just think, he's probably a guy, if they can move on from, they probably want to.
Yeah. Good call. Okay, your mystery team.
My mystery team is the Charlotte Hornets. So the main reason I've picked them, A, because they're an interesting team, but B, until this horrific another injury for Gordon Hayward, I was really unsure whether they were going to be a team who could keep going up the standings or would drastically fall. And now it seems like they've just kind of had their hand forced, and they're definitely going to push down into that play-in area. Right now, their record is 25-24, which is pretty freaking remarkable. At the beginning of the season, no one thought that they'd be over 500 at this time in the 6th seed in the East. Their last 10 games, they're 5-5, so they're winning at home. They're 13-9 at home and 12-15 on the road. So in division, they're winning their division, which is pretty amazing. But Charlotte, I just spoke about then briefly that Gordon Hayward has got an injury that they're expecting it's going to be at least a month for him to be out. So that's really tough when they're going down the stretch of the season. He's probably maybe not been their best player because of how amazing Rozier has been, but definitely their most relied upon, their most critical, their rock in the small forward position, because he's been scoring close to 20 points a game, assisting over 5 times a game, getting 5 rebounds, and just shooting the ball really, really well. And it seems like whenever they need a good bit of offense, he's the guy they're running it through. So I'm very interested to see how Rozier will go now with such a massive load on him as like the number one scoring option on their team. It's good that they've got Devontae Graham back. He's had a couple of nice shooting games. He's a player that I like who can get quite hot, but we know his shooting percentage is a bit up and down. Yeah. And then, it kind of turns into their front court. When you look at the face value of their front court, it kind of doesn't look like a team that should be in the playoffs. When you talk about PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, Biyombo, and Zeller, that's certainly not the best front courts. Doesn't really stack up with the best front courts in the East. But I like the way they play, and I think the coach deserves a lot of credit, and the way that they play together is impressive. I'm not sure how tough their schedule is going down the stretch, but it's going to be difficult for them to win games, especially if Rozier does miss any time. I just can't see them putting enough points on the board to beat teams. Like I didn't even mention LaMelo Ball and how he's going to be out for the rest of the season. So they are one of the thinnest teams that are in the playoffs right now with these injuries. You hope that Hayward can get back and can get fit before the playoff run. But I do expect Boston to probably jump them, maybe New York, and then Indiana and Chicago at the moment. They're 4 games behind, 4.5 games. Okay. So that's quite a good margin. It's
decent lead,
Charlotte. Yeah. So I think they're a team who will definitely be in the playoffs or definitely in the 7-8 play-in. But unfortunately they look like a team that may slide just because of injuries. But I do like them, and I really like watching them.
Well, PJ Washington for me is someone I thought was going to have a much better season than he actually has.
His shooting has fallen off a cliff.
He had an 0 for game against Phoenix, maybe. I think
0 for 9 or something.
0 for 9. He played 44 minutes because that game went to OT. He went 0 from 9 from the field, 0 of 2 from the free throw line. Like he's been a good field goal shooter for his first season. I didn't get that. That's so confusing to me. I couldn't even get one basket. But I think the main sort of thing with them is it's got to be a bit of a shit. Can we get a consistent bit of play off the bench from a Malik Monk? Because otherwise,
he's out too.
Is he?
Right now he's out. So
I thought I saw him play the other day. Maybe he only came back for one game and then he left again. I thought he played a little bit of the Brooklyn game potentially.
Yeah, it's nothing serious, but right now he's out. So
because I just don't see how they have enough scoring otherwise. You're really asking a lot of Rozier to score at least 30 plus every game. He's going to take the other team's best defender. If you have to play I know it's obviously a most extreme example to use if you're coming up against a Milwaukee. Drew Holiday is going to be all over Rozier, so it's going to be hard for him to do much. And then what are you hoping for? Devontae Graham makes 8 threes. Like it's tough otherwise, because Miles Bridges is good, but maybe as a fourth or fifth guy, not as a third guy. You obviously don't get much offensively from Cody Zeller and Biyombo. And then you start to then look at the bench and you go, well, they picked up Brad Wanamaker. Who else can they really have? The Martin twins, I don't think they're that good. It starts to get pretty grim, as you say, when you have to look down that bench now that they've had a couple of really big injuries. So they're the team that could struggle to hold on. And I think as long as they make a play-in game, anything could happen. But as you say, it's hard to see them finishing in the top 8, given some of these teams are really hunting at the moment. And the team we just mentioned, the Chicago Bulls, will probably push their way into that top 8 as well, because there's still at least 20 games to go in this regular season. So yeah, plenty of time for people to make leaps and bounds. That's for sure. I actually had a mystery player. Now, I just mentioned him then, but I want to speak about him more because I absolutely love watching him play. But Drew Holiday, he is on an absolute tear as of late. So since coming back from COVID, he's been ridiculously dominant. So he missed 10 games with COVID, and the Bucks went 5-5. But they're 12-3 now with Drew back in the lineup over the past 15. And in the last 7 games in particular, Drew has freaking elevated, especially offensively. So in the last 7 games, Drew is averaging 24 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, and 2 steals on 58% shooting, while guarding the best opposition scorer. So he puts up, and he obviously just got his extension as well. If you saw that, he got $160 million over the next 4 years, and a big bag, of course. So if he can continue his play into the playoffs, which I have no reason to believe that he can't, that is kind of a game changer for the Bucks and something they haven't had the past few seasons. And while he may not be potentially a top 5 scorer or any sort of that, I think the value he brings to this team in particular is you can't put a price on it. And so I think as long as, look, even if the Bucks don't get a top 2 seed, I think they're still in with a very good chance to at least make the conference finals. But if they can find their way into one of the top 2 seeds, then I think it's very close to a guarantee that they can find themselves in the conference finals. And we know in a playoff series, anything can happen. So you may look and go, oh, who's going to beat Brooklyn? But sometimes teams get nervous. I mean, we go back to before the bubble and we were like, well, who's going to beat the Clippers? Who's going to beat the Clippers 4 out of 7 times? I don't think many people thought Denver was that team, especially down 3-1. So anything can happen. I don't think anything's a guarantee. But yeah, the way Drew Holiday's playing, sheesh, it really makes Milwaukee such a freaking nightmare for our position.
It's a great boost in momentum for Milwaukee. And we have seen this from Drew in New Orleans. We did see this. There's stages during the season when he's taken over and become an all-star level scorer. And he's doing it as well as he's ever done it in the last couple of weeks. It's really, really special to watch some of his highlights and the way that he's doing it. Milwaukee as a team, you're right. I think they've benefited from the narrative moving towards, Brooklyn are unbeatable, because now there's not that pressure on them to be the number 1 seed for the last 2 years like they have been, and they're not expected necessarily to win. They're kind of just shooting for the stars now, trying to do it, and take some of that pressure off Chris Middleton, to be a third guy rather than a second guy. It seems clear that Holiday is willing to take over that playmaking role in clutch situations and throughout the game. They've been able to, that the longer that trade goes on, it feels like they didn't give up a lot. They just upgraded, they upgraded Bledsoe to Drew Holiday for a couple of picks that don't necessarily mean a lot for Milwaukee, given their situation at the top of the league. So I really like where they're going. Interested to see how PJ Tucker will slot in now. Because,
good call.
Drew Holiday playing at a super high level. Maybe if you can get Tucker back at any kind of level he was playing at Houston, then really gives him another option. So not to mention Giannis is playing basically flawlessly at the moment. So yeah, really, really good team to watch. And Drew Holiday, he's such a key, the way that he scores, he makes tough shots off the dribble. His assist numbers are up. We know that he's elite, getting steals defensively. I just think about a clutch moment. I think there's the first game back from COVID. He he stripped Jar on a big possession when the game was, or they were down one, I think. Yes. He stripped Jar on a crucial possession, got the timeout, and then they ended up getting a stop. And then in transition, he pulled up for a fadeaway basically with 5 seconds to go. Coach Bud didn't call the timeout, let it run, and he just went to work and hit a tough jump shot. So he's a guy who can do big things, and he's a guy who, has been really wanting to be in a situation where he can impact a winning team and be in crucial kind of playoff situations. So, yeah, I'm glad I have him on my fantasy team, and I'm optimistic about the way that the Bucks are doing it this year.
Yeah, well, they have a lot of versatility with what they can do, and I kind of wanted them to keep Torrey Craig, especially now, because if they have Drew Holiday, they could potentially, and now PJ Tucker as well, they could easily play, a small ball 5 with either Giannis or PJ at the 5. And then the other 3 guys, obviously Middleton, Drew, and it's probably going to be DiVincenzo. But I mean, if you had Torrey Craig there, that's what I kind of like, because I still think you have enough scoring with Drew, Middleton, and Giannis in that lineup, that you have 2 defensive guys there in Craig and PJ Tucker. That's not a bad 5 to throw it at Brooklyn when Brooklyn goes small themselves. Like, you could definitely have a worse 5 for both creation on offense and defense. So
have you got any faith in Jeff Teague? You reckon back with Budenholzer that he can potentially give them some minutes that, I don't know, like a George Hill was giving them a year ago?
No, I don't have him in the George Hill category. George Hill's a little bit better defensively. I think Jeff Teague can be a little bit sporadic. I mean, I put Jeff Teague more in the category that he could, score 10 points in a quarter and really help. I don't think he's too much of a defensive guy. I know people have said reunited with Budenholzer, and, he played well under Budenholzer in Atlanta and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think
it'll make it an easy transition. So I think, he might be able to give them something. It's not moving the needle or anything, but it's probably a better fit than, say, DJ Augustine.
Yeah, I think Boston were hoping for more out of a guy like Jeff Teague anyway. So, but potentially they were foreshadowing that he's not what they expected. So I wonder if that could potentially be the case for Milwaukee. The thought of Jeff Teague is maybe a lot different from the actual Jeff Teague you see on the court. So, yeah, but I just thought Drew Holiday's just been on absolute tear. Had to bring him up.
My player to spotlight who's been on a tear is Devin Booker, because that not a lot of people have been talking about this team.
No.
The Suns in the last 2 months are 23-5.
Yeah,
league best. So these guys could actually overtake Utah the way they're playing right now. Like, they're just winning every.
Are they a couple games off them?
2 games, only 2 games behind.
Oh wow, yeah, they could definitely.
Booker, his season numbers, it's tough to say, because I had him right on the edge of being an all-star in terms of making those 7 reserve spots. But you look at his numbers now for the season. He's played 45 games in 34 minutes a game, which is high, but not too crazy. 26 points is what he's up to now. 4.5 assists, 4 rebounds, and a steal, and 3 turnovers. So his assist to turnover is slightly improved, but you look at his field goal percentage, 49.8, almost 37% from deep, and 86 at the line. He's getting to the free throw line over 5 times a game, which is what you want out of your star scorer. So 26 a game on 50% shooting, like, Booker is low-key just getting it done as well as anyone shooting the ball. So I spoke about it at the beginning of the year when I saw the kind of the way that they were playing, how they've slowed their pace down and been a lot more methodical in their offense, and they're either getting a good shot for Booker or Paul, or a layup for Ayton at the rim, or they're kicking out late clock to one of their many wing shooters that they've got. That's kind of what their offense is, and that's what they're getting every possession. But you can't win lots of games without having that one reliable first option who's really getting it done. And yeah, I think a little bit more spotlight needs to be put on Booker, because he's flat out balling.
Yeah, and this will be his first, playoffs, won't it? Or has he been in the before? He hasn't been in it before. That's right. So there's another aspect to it that makes it really exciting. The fact that he's really, as you say, not really getting enough clout. People are sort of overlooking his season in particular. He wasn't an all-star, right? He got snubbed.
He got
Or did he make it?
replacement. So second year
that's
in a row,
right.
he's in for injury replacement.
That's right.
I'm looking at their team list and their spread right now. They've got 6 guys in double figures, including Saric, Bridges, and Crowder to go along with Ayton, Paul, and Booker. Cam Johnson's up at 9.8, so he's right there. And then their bench guys are giving them something every night. You know, Payne, Nader, Kaminsky, Torrey Craig now, they're all averaging 7 a game. So these guys, this is one of the most efficient offenses in the league. And it's going to be really interesting if they can translate that to wins in the playoffs. And the higher their seed goes, the better that matchup is in the first round for them potentially to get out of that first round.
Yeah, and just not to rub salt into the wound, but they have given your boys a lot of trouble this year, haven't they? Did they beat you guys opening night at home, or did you guys beat them? I know they beat you twice in Dallas, but I don't know if they beat you opening night.
Yeah, opening night at Phoenix. Yeah, we played awful. We were in the game the whole way though, and then lost it. And then Booker threw one into the heart at Dallas only about a month ago. Yeah, he hit a big 3. Yeah. So. I don't really want to see them. They're tough. They're tough as Chris Paul. He's a dog. He'll be getting into Luka's head, I think. But I don't know if they're going to finish 1 seed, then we might need to verse them. I think it's really interesting how it'll come out in the West. You know, who's going to be the 7th seed, because that's going to be one of the toughest 7 seeds there's ever been. So interesting. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. That's covered those ones. I think, as you say, the future pods we do, it'll be interesting to really get a better indication of matchups, because then that's when we'll really be able to start dissecting how these playoffs will go, because that's the number one thing. It's hard to jump ahead, and as exciting as it is, it's just too difficult to start talking about how teams can do and how far they can go until you get a better indication of what their path might look like. Absolutely. To navigate through the playoffs. So no, that's good. Okay, so you've got some questions.
Absolutely. Okay. Some rapid fire questions for Chris. Okay. All right. If you had to guess now, what position did the Lakers finish in the Western Conference?
Oh, if I had to guess now, I think they fall out of the top 4. I think they'll be 5th.
5th?
Yep.
Okay. Cool. All right. Who's more likely to win league MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo or James Harden?
People won't go James Harden. They hate him too much. As good as a year he's having, I think the hammy injury will really hurt now. If he kept playing and didn't have the injury, I think he could have actually been in with a bit more of a case. But yeah, it's Giannis. I know people potentially get voter fatigue with him winning it, as often as he has over the past few years. But yeah, I think his play is starting to really elevate as of late. You saw what he did on the road against Portland. That was absolute abuse. So when he can flex his muscles like that, it just shows you the real caliber of the player that he is. So yeah, Giannis over Harden.
Okay, cool. Which team out of these two do you reckon regrets not making a move more at the trade deadline? New York Knicks or Sacramento Kings?
Knicks. The one thing the Knicks are absolutely struggling with at the moment is potentially another scorer, another option. And it doesn't really matter what position that scorer would be it a front court player or a wing or a guard. They're just missing another option. So at the moment, Randall does everything for them, but their best shooter is Reggie Bullock. We've spoken about him in the past. And so if Reggie's having a tough night shooting the ball, you're then probably going to have to be asking a lot of a guy like RJ Barrett or Derrick Rose to really wind back the clock. Derrick Rose can give you a solid anywhere from 10 to 20 points on a nightly basis, but to have a real, secondary playmaker outside of Randall was probably a key thing they could have addressed, or just another shooter. You do see games where Randall can't, throw a rock in the ocean, because he's, if people really watch Julius Randall, his MO now on offense is he takes a lot of jumpers. He just does. He's very perimeter based. A lot of threes. So when games where he really can't make a shot at all, it puts him in a hole. And I think you see even games where they keep it close, they don't really seem to get it done. This is the second game in a row they've lost to Brooklyn where it's been really close and they've had a chance. They lost 2 close games to Philly. Randall had the opportunity to hit the game winner in Madison Square Garden, but then
kind of played for the foul on both those occasions rather than just trying to
yes.
score.
Yeah, so I think if they had that other guy, that would have been great, and maybe they will be in the buyout market potentially to try and pick up someone else that could be there. But I even thought a guy like, I know he's not a prolific scorer, but maybe Bielitsa could have been a pickup that they could have tried to target. Just someone else that's offense oriented, and maybe Olynyk is there. Maybe Olynyk is there for them to pick up if he gets bought out. So,
well, you know what, the Mavericks, for basically nothing, were able to swoo and get Melly and Reddick.
You're right.
Why couldn't the Knicks have done that potentially? That would have been a nice little fit for them. But anyway, we're happy to take those two. I like what I'm seeing from Melly so far in particular. Really, really nice. Okay, so I got two more questions for you.
Okay.
Should the Golden State Warriors be packing it in? Should they be trying to go down this? I know they won't. I know they're a team who's got too much pride. They've got Curry on the team. But do you reckon they should be trying to roll down the standings?
No, as long as you got Curry, you got to go for it. Just keep pushing. I know they're really struggling. They've really come up against some teams that, like, I could have been absolutely certain they were going to bounce back, and after the 50-point, 60-point loss to the Raptors, they would take care of business against Atlanta. They just played Atlanta at home a week ago, and Atlanta kind of won with ease in the end. But I thought they would really bounce back and respond the only way we know how. And that's by making statements. And Steph had 35 plus or in that game the other day, and they still lost. So it's not enough. It's disappointing that because Oubre's gone back to Oubre how he was at the start of the year, where he couldn't make a shot and he missed his first 33s this season or something ridiculous. If you don't have that option, then it makes it a really tough proposition. So they do need a Clay back. And I think people have started to realize just potentially how much work, and myself included in that Wiseman he's just not ready. He's not reliable enough. He's very much a rookie that is learning the ropes. So
that leans on to my final question.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, give us your rookie of the year if you had to make the pick right now. And is this basically the most uninteresting rookie race that we've had in the last 5 years?
Second question I'll answer first. Yes, I think that combined with the Anthony Bennett year, sorry, where I think Brogdon won it that year. Wasn't it?
Averaging 10 points a game.
Was it Brogdon that won it that year?
Yeah.
Or no?
Embiid only played 20 games.
That's right. Because Oladipo was the second. Was he the second pick and Embiid was third?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that was, I don't know how long ago that was. It's probably a bit longer, 6 or 7. So that was the most boring since this one. But yeah, I think the LaMelo Ball injury really killed all momentum. But I think a lot of NBA fans, I don't know if this is a fan vote or this is a media vote, but I hope people don't just look at box scores and potential highlights of Anthony Edwards, because for the most part, he's just a bit of a chucker at the moment. I think you've got to reward a guy like Halliburton that's actually a winning player. He would be my rookie of the year. I think he's come in and been, he doesn't look like a rookie, whereas Anthony Edwards shows flashes, but at the end of the day, you can pretty clearly tell he's a rookie. I mean, Anthony Edwards is taking a ton of threes. He certainly doesn't mind getting his own, but Halliburton will have a game where he only takes 5 shots, but he has 9 assists. Like there's that part of Halliburton's game that's so mature and developed. And so it's scary to think where he could be in a couple of years. But yeah, Halliburton for me. I'm not sure if he's the favorite, but Halliburton I would give it to.
I think unbelievably Edwards is the favorite right now, but Halliburton's very, very close behind.
That's so dumb. I mean, man, if LaMelo Ball could have played at least, say, even 10 more games, that would have been really good to at least put him over the line. But I think it's put him in a tough position now that he's going to miss, I don't know what the total games he'll miss will be, 30 plus. Half the season. That's hard to win that award when you miss that many games.
Yeah, agreed. It's just too tough. All right, I think that's all we've got for the rapid fire questions. One little thing I might put in here is 6 men of the year. It feels like it's been locked up for the whole year. Basically, Clarkson continues to score at a high rate. He's cooled off a little bit just because their kind of team is spreading out the scoring a little bit more. But a guy who's making a run who you picked at the beginning of the year is Jalen Brunson. He's absolutely killing it. Every single time he's on the court, he's been absolutely killing it. He's close to 50, 40, 90. He's put his average up at 13 points a game. He is, one of the best guards coming off the bench in the league, an incredible stabilizer, makes good passing decisions. But the thing that's so impressive about him is that he can just flat out score. Like, not only is he shooting the three ball so well, but he gets switches. He takes guys downhill off the dribble. And he has like a really nice post game where he can kind of turn around and shoot a little fade away in the middle of the key, or throw a shot fake and then get it all the way to the rim at layup. He did a couple of times a great move against Gobert yesterday. And it just kind of proves to me what I already thought about him, that he can score on anyone. And he's been as consistent as there is off the bench this season.
Yeah, I'd kill for Jalen. I love him. He's still not, I'm just looking at it now, he's still not an option. There's no market to bet on him for sixth man of the year, which is crazy. There wasn't before the season. I remember the odds went as far as $90, and the only guy that was actually Trey Burke that was there from Dallas over Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
But yeah, now there's no option. The one that's the worst odds is Lou Williams at $126, or the surefire favorite of Jordan Clarkson at $1.04. So,
who's second? Who's second in that?
Montrez.
Okay, yeah, he
$21.
Okay, yeah, he's still coming off the bench despite being in their best five at the moment. But
yes,
he's been important to what the Lakers are doing. If they're going to win any games over this stretch, it's going to be on the back of big games from Montrez.
Yeah, 100%. Who do you think? I'll throw this quick question to you. Who's your defensive player of the year?
I think it's got to be Gobert right now.
Really?
And I agree with kind of the rankings at ESPN. I love Simmons and what he's been doing, but I think Gobert's still number one. I just watched them play against the Mavericks, and like the amount of times Luka would beat his guy, get into the paint. You know, every now, like most games, Luka's able to get like a couple uncontested layups, or like just beat his guy and then, all right, I'm 6'8", I'm just going to lay this up.
Yeah.
Like Gobert, he just needs to be anywhere near the vicinity of the ball in the paint, and it becomes shit. I'm about to get this absolutely sent, blocked really hard. So you've got to kick out. And then the whole Utah defense knows that, like, if we do get beat, all we got to do is start closing out to the guys on the wing, because we've got the paint basically covered. And you know, he's a special defender. And I think I talked about this before when we went into how good the Sixers defense is in our game that you guys beat us, that beat the Mavs, that one of the most crucial parts about their team defense as Sixers is how good Simmons is guarding the guards around the pick and roll. But then it's Embiid in the middle, who's almost as good as Gobert at protecting the rim right now this season. So I guess that kind of works against Simmons a little bit, that they've got such a good guy behind him. But I think Gobert just ahead of Simmons. I'm guessing you take Ben.
Well, I hate that it's a big man award. It shouldn't be a big man award, Das. It's a discriminatory award. Like, they only ever give it to the big man. If it's not Gobert, it's Anthony Davis, or, you know, I don't know if Kawhi stole it one year and maybe got it, but he would be a rare case if that actually did happen. Or I'm blanking on my memory, but I think you can have someone in there that's, let's say, a really good shot blocker, and you know, they can't do much else, but it's very hard to replicate Ben, who can defend 1 through 4. Like, for example, how much worse would, just defensively, if instead of Gobert, Utah had a guy like JaVale McGee? How much worse would they be defensively? Do you think it's a lot?
It'd be a lot different. Yeah, I think.
Because I think he can protect the rim pretty well himself. Like, maybe the IQ isn't as high, but I think if you chuck someone in like, I don't know, Torrey Craig instead of Ben Simmons, as good as Craig is, that looks dramatically different defensively. Whereas I think you can potentially get away with, you can find other people that just protect the rim, because how good of a post defender is Gobert? When he matches up against Jokic, I swear Jokic absolutely eats on Gobert.
He does burn him. He does.
And there would be a couple of other examples that I'm pretty sure Embiid ate against Gobert when they played against Utah and Philly.
For sure.
Donovan had 30 points in that game that Philly won, but he took 30 shots. He took 34 shots to score 30 points. You remember he was ejected in the end, Donovan Mitchell, for the two techs, and Embiid was like doing the tech thing. But that's
hit that massive three.
Yeah, that's because Simmons is guarding Donovan Mitchell the whole game, and he's literally making every single shot impossible, and he has to like bust his ass just to get a half decent look. But again, it could be me being biased, but I think you can find enough of a replacement that can do similar things to what Gobert can do, but it's very hard to find a guy that can. And I think switching 1 through 4 is harsh. There's potential Simmons can switch actually one through 5. Sorry. So
yeah, and there is that part of Gobert's game that we talked about that Finney-Smith, utilized against him, that he won't go out there to those guys right at the 3-point line. Like he's not gonna. He's protecting the paint. That's what he does. You're going to be able to get wide open threes against him if you work the ball correctly. It's I think when you break it down, it's really tough, this award to pick at times. I think it's easy to give it to a guy like Giannis because of just the effort that he puts in. And if there was one player who you wouldn't want guarding you, I think it's Giannis. Like, is there anyone that he can't guard? Is there anyone who reckons they're stronger or faster than him? Like, I would imagine trying to score against Giannis. That just gives me nightmares. But they've also got Drew Holiday on that team as well. So, and has been snubbed potentially for first team or defense. So there's a lot of good defenders out there, and it's a tough award to pick.
Well, the interesting thing with Giannis, that just after saying this point, we can end it. But he doesn't take the best. So if Drew's taking the best perimeter scorer, Giannis isn't then taking the next. Giannis, I get his importance for offense and whatnot, and so potentially you want to look to rest him and have him on a less of a scoring threat defensively. But I never see him like in the Brooklyn game when he did not take Durant.
Interesting.
He didn't guard Durant. I'm almost certain of that. I should double check before saying that, but I'm pretty sure he didn't.
And they just got Tucker as well, and they've got a nice defensive lineup.
So there's this stigma that like he's this lockdown, like who can score on Giannis, and yes, that's very valid given his not only combination of size, speed, strength, but he actually, I think it's a little bit of a myth. He doesn't. I think his value more often than not in the defensive system with Milwaukee is more as his ability to come across and play help defense.
His recovery from trying to block a shot, contest a shot to get back to get the rebound or to block the next guy. He's as quick as anyone in the league.
Yeah. So I think that's what's also
scary. Yeah. That's what's also scary about Gobert. Like he challenges a guy and then turns around, and that guy who he just threw a little pass to someone else, Gobert's there and he's 7'2", and he's just going to block that one too. So kick it back out. Some of these, this is why these teams are the elite teams on defense. Like that's why they're the top of the standings, because it's just so difficult to score against these teams. That'll actually be an interesting race down the stretch. Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah,
that's definitely one to keep an eye on for sure. Okay, perfect. Well, we were going to do locks, but not enough markets are out for locks, so we'll have to leave them. We haven't done our locks. We haven't done our locks for today, so we'll get them up as well. There's a couple of afternoon games. We're recording this at 11:30 on Wednesday, so we'll look to get up our locks pretty soon. I think it's Golden State, Milwaukee, and Clippers, Blazers to choose from for the afternoon slate. So a couple good games to pick there and find some value DAS as we make our way back to 500. I know me personally, I had a slip up where I was like, Blazers are going to win. No issue. Can Covington get 10 points? Yeah, he can. So I did the double. I did Covington and then Blazers to win. And I saw Covington's first 2 shots and they're like, we're not close from deep. And I was like, oh, fuck, here we go. So, of course, he finished on like 5 points and the Blazers won by 50. And so he only played 20 minutes. And I was just like, punching the wall. I as soon as you think you have a good bet and then you watch like 5 minutes into the game and you're like, this is fucked. This is already dead. So it's brutal.
It is brutal. I went a couple of back-to-back ones where I went player performance and they missed by 1. It really hurt me. That Moses Brown got 12 rebounds. I needed 12 and a half. Schroeder got 6 assists. I needed 6.5. Yeah, that hurt. I'm on a losing skid, so I'm definitely due for one. So keep your eye out for a win coming up.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Okay, well, appreciate everyone for tuning in. Darcy and I will be back probably next week, and hopefully we can have a bit more of an indication, a bit more of a sample from some of these teams that we can really dig into. There's definitely some interesting matchups that we can talk about over the coming week. Just mentioned before about how Portland have a couple of big games where they play Utah. Interesting to see how Utah bounced back from their first real challenge, which was Dallas. They've had a pretty easy stretch for the most part these last 4 or 5 games. I know they faced Orlando. They faced a Chicago team without potentially Zach LaVine. They faced someone else that was a pretty easy dub for them as well. So it's hard to get up for all these games. So want to see, a lot of people are questioning whether Utah are the real deal. So it'll be good to see Utah face some of these high quality oppositions, and there'll be a lot for us to speak about next pod.
I think also, the Lakers are a team to watch over the next couple of weeks. They've got a tough road trip coming up at Miami, at Brooklyn, at New York, at Chicago, and then Boston and a back-to-back of Utah at home. Wow. So without their 2 studs, this will be really interesting. This could really form their seeding in the playoffs. I know everyone likes to watch Lakers games, so try to watch them now without LeBron and AD. See how much you like it.
Yeah. A bit of and no Drummond. So Drummond's fit in perfectly as well because he's arrived and immediately gotten injured. So it seems as though that's fitting the MA of the team at the moment.
It's going to be the Carew show and the THT show. Let's see it.
Definitely. Plenty of Schroeder as well. And I think they've got a nice win to start off the road trip, actually. I think they're up by 20 over the Raptors at the moment.
Big.
Yeah, they're up by 24 over the Raptors. 9 minutes to go on the 4th. So that could be at least one win they can bank away as they work their way through this pretty tough road trip, as you say. But Darcy and I will be back next week. Keep an eye out for locks, and we will chat then.
We'll speak to you guys soon. Hey. Let's go. 50%.
Bingo. Okay.
Like our locks. All right, mate.
See
you
ya.
next time.